Chainsaw Man was phenomenal. Like, what a great reading experience this time is. A bunch of beautiful artwork, massive set pieces, double spreads. Conceptually, it's just really cool to figure out how Fujimoto's artistic brain works, because who the hell thinks of Michigan Sword? Clearly, he does. And it brings up a question. Why Michigan to begin with? Like, okay, it makes sense with Yoru and like United States and the representation of war and them being a huge powerhouse for that. Eventually we creep up to bombs and then perhaps nuclear warfare. It's all kind of lining up perfectly for that direction. But again, why Michigan? I was doing a little bit of research and turns out that Michigan is quite influential when it comes to war, specifically World War I and World War II. Turns out that Michigan was a primary, one of the largest and most crucial, critical manufacturers and resource hubs for the Allied war effort, which means they produced a litany of ammo, guns, tanks, aeroplanes. They trained soldiers. They even had prisoner of war camps, I believe. There was so much that they were doing to help and aid the war efforts. Supposedly, it was a very huge public endeavor, getting the everyday citizen involved not only within this production, but also the funding, helping hand, workers, etc. to prop up these factories and resource hubs. If you connect that back to Yoru, United States war, that kind of makes a lot of sense, in that this weapon could be a very huge and powerful weapon for her, not just because it's the whole state of Michigan which he is transforming, beautifully drawn by the way, but because of what Michigan represents with its history. Did Fujimoto mean to do this? I'm not necessarily sure, but even if there was a chance for it to be something like this, or even similar to it, maybe something else entirely that I haven't even thought of, or maybe you can think of and have a much better idea, please, I would love to hear it, and I wouldn't put it past him as an author. He does tend to do stuff like this. It's within his nature to add so much extra, so much more detail, so much more depth to explore within a very singular moment that feels like it barely gives room for context. I doubt he will ever explain it. I doubt he will go into even more detail, because why bother? The fun is of the moment, and the fun is the context that all of us kind of create together on trying to find its purpose and or meaning. Even if there was no purpose, no meaning, Fujimoto didn't think about this, who cares? The fact that he can spark that type of conversation, the fact that he can invoke that type of thought within a lot of people is amazing. It brings the community together, brings the idea of this story and this world together, and honestly, it's just him. It's how he's always functioned. It's how all of his stories work. There is so much behind what his intentions actually are, and sometimes they're very literal, very purposeful, very well explored, and other times they're super abstract, super conceptual, and barely recognized or mentioned ever again. It is a great time, and partially one of the biggest reasons why I love Fujimoto as an author. Not just Chainsaw Man, not just Fire Punch, but all of his one-shots, all of his works combined. When I say that he and his assistants cooked on this chapter, they truly did. Stunning visual representation of this fight. Two massive, powerful, calibered people are kind of weird to show fighting, because Ward just kind of shoots bullets and throws a bunch of her enemies at it, and Pochich is so fast to even visualize. He can kind of teleport all over the place. You kind of got to get a bit creative. You got to show this off in a stylistic way. So you have them standing on like a plethora of doors that is the representation of hell, but for Denji also a representation of his trauma, which is what is hidden behind his personal door. You have him manipulating gravity and changing the perspective and throwing all of this chaos in the air. Imagine it animated. Take the movie experience, the beautiful animation in there, chuck it for a fight like this. Insane to see what incredibly talented artists and animators would cook up in a stylistic way. There was one panel in particular that really stood out to me, and I really wish I could show you. I can't for legal reasons, but it kind of looks like this, if you remember. I love this panel. It's something raw and visceral and horrifying about it. I feel like I've seen a version of this before, not in Chainsaw Man, but like another story. I don't know if it was a movie or if it was an animal, that beast or a monster or something. I feel like I've seen a version of this before, and perhaps it is a reference to something. Kind of dashing through the smoke, looking like this hideous creature about to annihilate Yoru, and she's just standing there like, huh? So far, their fight has been really fun, really energetic. It's filled with a lot more dialogue than I thought it would be. Obviously, we went through the first stages, the trauma bonding between Denji and Asa. Now we're going into the Poch to Yoru fight, and we're balancing this back and forth really, really nicely. For some, it might feel a little bit too too fast, a little bit too chaotic, a little bit sporadic or all over the place, but there is a clear direction here. Even though there may be points where it feels like it's stalling in places, the ball is still rolling and just not at a consistent pace. And look, I get it. If you don't like the weekly reading experience, I 100% understand. There's parts where I don't enjoy it either. I recommend reading it as a binge all at once. If you're sick of people telling you to do that, I understand as well, because there's not really many other options. Clearly, Fujimoto is writing the story within his own vision, with an intention and design behind it. This is not a fault of not understanding how to write a weekly story. Truly wish that this was at least somewhat recognized a little bit more when people don't like the pacing. It's fine to not like it. It's fine to be upset about being recommended to binge read it so often, but he's not silly. He's done weekly manga before. He knows how this machine works. This is not a fault that he is randomly creating and can't fix. This is a design choice that he is purposely choosing to approach as. Personally, I don't think he really cares about the weekly reading experience, because there's so many things that he could have changed to emphasize points, ideas, reveals, anything so much more clearly. In some instances, it might have even helped him. And I could be giving him too much of a leniency. Some might say, Fujimoto is not that good. He can make mistakes. And yes, of course, but I think there is a very clear difference between making a mistake and not really understanding what you're doing, and purposefully knowing that you're going to make a mistake but wanting to write the story anyway, the way you envision it. It's like a lot of people get disappointed when their favorite character doesn't get enough screen time, and suddenly it's wasted potential and so much more should have been done for it. It's bad writing because that character didn't get more screen time, but in a lot of instances, that character is fundamental and works perfectly fine. They don't need any more, and just because they don't get it, suddenly they're not a bad character. They've just served their purpose, and a lot more things than you actually realize just serve purpose. It's what makes stories tick, and depending on your type of author, they're going to explore these avenues whatever way they see fit. Again, Fujimoto can make mistakes. That's just being human, and that's just being an author. Moving past that, I want to mention Yoru, because I really love her conversation in here. She's derailed into this hypocritical, chaotic, all over the place person, which I shouldn't say derail because she's always been that, but now her personality has switched from this loner, isolated individual to I've changed. We need family and comrades, and humans are stupid, devils supreme, and the magnificence of friends and family, blah blah blah. To wage war, you need people. I think this is a quality change for her. Priceless. It works so well with the overall motif that war is represented through Yoru being this over corruptive force, can kind of hypnotize you in a way where you feel kind of embedded or honored or willed to go and serve for your country and for your people or for a bigger thing. Does that make sense? Yoru warps that idea because she isn't giving people the liberty of choice to fight for their country, which is a very honorable thing, of course. Instead, she's manipulating and controlling and basically has the whole situation of her friends, family, comrades, allies, etc., people that make up war, all underneath her belt of control. So going back to her hypocritical nature, which arguably is probably the dumbest thing about her, because of course she doesn't realize, which is perfect, kind of like she just doesn't know that what she is saying doesn't actually align to what she has done. But you can't get her to really understand that. She is a devil at the end of the day with a very small fraction of human understanding, so from our perspective, she just looks funny and hypocritical. I think it does more to characterize her, even though we don't necessarily need it. It's always fun to elevate the villain or the problem within the story to such a degree of cartoonery where it just comes across hilarious. Now there's a potential point of, well, if all these people get killed, she's going to get really upset. And we've seen what happens. Michigan Sword came out to play. If that goes and whatever else goes after it, I think there's a chance that at the end of this fight, you see her, and if she's losing, you see her shriek, cowardice, and the hypocritical nature all kind of unfold on itself to a shriveling, conniving, crying baby that she realistically is. Funny enough, you've seen it before. For me, the biggest thing that happens from here, we elevate the power scale so much more with Michigan Sword, because really, this has to be one of her most powerful weapons. Not the most, but one of. What comes after that, I don't really know. But I think we will get to a point of nuclear warfare. And not just nukes in themselves, but the United States bomb or the US nuke. This might sound oddly familiar, but we are playing into that thematic motif of war. Fujimoto tends to play into deep representations of war, especially between Japan and the United States, especially with the usage of nuclear warfare and how Japan actually feels about nuclear powered stuff as well as weaponry in that regard. So it gets very real, very rapid. So there's a huge pipeline of exploration and breakdown for the criticism of war and how Fujimoto likes to approach that in both a physical, artistic representation, gun and tank, for example, one of them coming out of the Statue of Liberty. That should be telling in itself, but also the emotional, manipulative Yoru aspect of it, camaraderie, friendship, etc. I really enjoyed this chapter. I'm excited to see where it goes, and I would love to hear all of your thoughts.